Remember, such great stuff to go over with you today. Uh, it's going to play on last month's training, so I hope you've been able to visit that. This month, there is a little bit of homework I'm going to encourage you to do because what we want to do on week one, again, listen to or watch these, preferably watching because I usually pop things up on the screen that are helpful. But some people can listen to them if that's your choice, driving to work or on your lunch break or while you're exercising. Go ahead and listen to these, but at least listen, hopefully watch at the beginning of each month, especially the first week. And then the second week, you want to re listen or do some of the homework that I'm going to give and then implement. And the key thing is implementing, writing down some of the things you want to implement from these trainings or things that stuck out for you. But this week, we're talking about the confluence where the combination of a few really good principle books and philosophies on business. One is, of course, Business Finishing School, which I love and I'm always referencing. And the module 17 called Superman Syndrome, where I'm going to update it with Superman and Wonder Woman Syndrome. And we're going to deep dive into that. And then there's also two books that I really recommend reading through the year, sometime this year, both owners, managers, and employees, because it's going to help benefit all of you when you speak the same language on business concepts. One is called the E Myth, and I love some of the principles it brings to the surface we're going to talk about today. And another one is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Wow, the philosophical, foundational principles and philosophies and life practices that he teaches, which helps us, even though he's thinking of real estate, which is a great thing for you to have an understanding of. He also covers a lot of really good business principles. And I want to encourage you and challenge you to listen or read that and put it into how does that apply to you, saying me in my life or me in my place of business that I'm working. So one of the big things is Superman syndrome. So I want to help you as employees to not only and managers in the place of business, not only recognize this principle and how these interplay today that we're talking about, but also how you can better help work and serve the owners of the business, which of course leads to better outcomes for your patients and clients and for your income eventually. So Superman Syndrome on module 17 of Business Finishing School, which you can find on YouTube for free. Highly recommend listening to it. It drives home the principles of simplicity, probability, leverage, simplifying things with systems where it's easier to manage and you manage by systems rather than managing by personality. Where if some person leaves, it's the manager. There's nobody there left to train or to help implement the systems that happen with franchisability. Another word that I use often, where the owners, and we'll be doing training for them, where we're talking about franchising their business. Not that they're going to sell it for franchising it out or anything, but if they can't build a business by having systems in place that you, as the management or employees, can then utilize to help train each other and help stay within the lines of how to build your successful business, it's chaos. And chaos and confusion cause stress. So when the owner has Superman or Wonder Woman syndrome, they're trying to do everything themselves. They don't want to let go of the reins and do stuff. But smart business owners start to expand and leverage by having systems that are simple, probable, and leverageable. They can bring in more people like yourselves, employees and team members. That now you can take some of the weight off their shoulders by doing some wax on, wax off systems in the office to help process patients or process new clients and keep them onboarded and be following up with them strategically through the course of their care or their case so that there are good probable outcomes at the end because the systems were in place to follow through that the ball didn't get dropped along the way. That comes down to systems on how we answer the phone, systems on how we process paperwork, systems on how we get paid, either prepaid or a payment system or payment on the end based on the services you rendered. They're all systems. And those, when we take that weight off the shoulders of having to be Superman or Superwoman, that goes for office managers too. Sometimes we try to do too much instead of systematizing and delegating. So, one of the key things that the E Myth and Business Finishing School in this module we'll talk about, as well as Rich Dad Poor Dad, is delegation. And in order to delegate, we have to have systems to do it right. So that's where I want you to make sure that you're visiting how are our systems in the office and how can we make them better? How can we make them simpler? How can we now then delegate? And then remember the what we talked about with hats and posts? The owner ultimately has the crown, and then the hats go down to whoever's managing, which sometimes it's the owner because it's just a one man or one woman shop. or a one man, one woman shop with one employee rather than having multiple employees. So depending on how you scale your business, you're going to have more hats for management and post things that need to get done, or hats for a job like front desk manager versus the massage area versus the physical therapy area, or new patient acquisition or new client acquisition versus HR versus actual procedures in the office for handling patients or clients. So you usually have departments, and each department should have their systems in place. And so you want to visit those so you guys have those cooking really good. And that's where it comes down to, and this is a whole other training thing, but having your weekly meetings and your monthly and definitely your annual, what we call war room, or your powwow where you get together for a couple hours or half the day to really go, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are the steps to fix what we're doing wrong? What are the steps to maximize what we're doing right and leverage that properly? Well, those come down to weekly meetings, going over your stats, and keeping score. So one of the other key things I want to go over is keeping score. Everything we do in the office, whether it's a medical office or a legal office, what we do for patients and clients, that is important. That is not a game. But the management and the flow of business can be gamified. But if we're not keeping score, we don't know if we're winning or losing. So that's why we have to have metrics like KPIs, key practice indicators, or KBIs, key business indicators, where you have your stats that are critical. How many people are coming in the door each day this week? How much did we collect over the counter or cash this week versus how much did we collect in the mail or old money that finally came in versus how many regular patient visits did we see, or versus how many referrals did we get from old clients that loved what we did for them in the law firm? These KPIs or KBIs are so important for keeping score to know if you're winning or losing the game. It's not just about looking at income and expenses, though that is an important part, but the KPIs and KBIs help you in what you can control. You can't change at the end of the month how much you made or how much you spent, but you can proactively know where to focus on the business to keep the right plates spinning that generate the income and the success for referrals and things, so that you're getting more money in, getting more less expense, and then thus making a more profitable business, which then helps with bonuses and helps with continued services and serving more in your community. So these are important things. One of the key things they talk about in business finishing school, which really is focused for the owners, but I encourage the team to also watch it and get thinking like this. I want you to think like owners. We want you to have ownership mentality, realizing taking a little ownership of the business, like this is as much my place as it is the business owner's place, because I take to heart that I know if this thing succeeds, I benefit as well. And that takes having the structure, like we talked about last time, with having the right pay structures and bonus structures. So that's something you guys need to work on and visit on. But the important thing here is learning from your job position how to systematize so you have simplicity, probability, and leverage, so you can delegate those posts. Remember, you are the hat of whatever your job title is, and there are posts under your hat of things you can do. Posts you can share or ask somebody to help you with. For example, if you're the front desk manager and answering the phone is part of that, if you have other staff or team members trained, you can delegate that post. Can you answer the phones while I'm going to go do this job right now? So that way you can hand that post off, but it's ultimately under your hat. You're the key responsible. So if they're not doing it right, it's because you didn't train them right. So that's where we want to have systems and protocols so we can train people to simplify and leverage and help each other out. So powerful. Don't be a Superman, Superwoman trying to do everything your way. Try to systematize so you can delegate. Now, I'm going to tell your doctors and attorneys in their training, all three of the references I've given today really talk heavily about delegating as much as possible. In personal injury, there is only so much we can delegate. Doctors need to do certain things. They can delegate it, like having a team member help out with an exam or the x-rays or writing the reports and stuff that are doctor duties. But the problem is it bites them in the butt later if they go in court and said, doctor, is this your handwriting on this report? Doctor, is this you signed this report? Did you do these entries? No, I had the staff do it. And that's dangerous. So there's certain things that you want to in personal injury, make sure that the doctors and attorneys only do. The paralegals are not going to go to court. That's the attorney's job. The paralegals prepare the case and are monitoring and keeping it going so that the attorney can have their finger on the pulse of it through to the end, and then have everything buttoned up nice so it's easier for them to just go in there and clobber in court versus them just doing all the work themselves. So this is the beauty of these systems, finding the balance in your practice or your firm, how to juggle these, knowing what to delegate and what not to delegate. Ultimately, this all goes back upstream. Okay, which employees, what are their responsibilities, hats and posts? Management, what are your responsibilities, hats and posts? Owners, what are your responsibilities, hats and posts? Learning what you can delegate through systematizing, huge thing. But you want to manage with systems. That's key, and that's understanding those hats and posts. So in summary, don't try to do everything yourself. Play as a team. Be cross-trained where you can help each other out. Know the boundaries. Know the hats and posts. Keep score. Make sure you're using software. This is what's so funny. Some docs are still so paper, or even attorneys where I've seen big piles of things on their desk. Have a good software system like we talked about at the beginning of the year that it just click a few buttons and boom, your KPIs are in. If you it's garbage in, garbage out. If you're putting your right data in, it will simplify what you're getting out, which is awesome for you to bring that report to the meetings, the Monday meetings or weekly meetings and go, here's our KPIs for this week. Here's how great we did. Yay, rewards. Here's what we need to work on. Okay, let's fine tune. Those quarterly the quarterly meetings are annual, especially annual and quarterly meetings called War Rooms. Make sure you're doing those. All right, have a wonderful week. Please dive into YouTube on Business Finishing School Module 17, Superman Syndrome. All right, take care.